Sisters and brothers, I have a question for the students in the room. I see some high school and middle school students and even younger. Have you ever had a teacher like that judge? Have you ever had a teacher who neither fears God nor respects any human being? A teacher who just doesn't care about you? I see some smiles of recognition. And maybe that's a question for the grown-ups too. Maybe there's a boss you've had like that. Maybe there's a boss you have like that. How does it feel to be around that unjust teacher or boss or whatever? How does it feel? I have to say, when I'm around that person, I have a lot of feelings. But mostly, though, I'm afraid. Afraid of what might happen in an interaction. Will I upset that boss? Will I be punished? Is this going to end badly? After all, who am I? The teacher has total power over me. And I think maybe that's a little insight into what it's like to be a widow in Jesus' day. There is no one to stand up for you, no one to care. You're alone. You have nothing. No income, no resources, no family. Just begging and hoping. Your entire livelihood may depend on this judge's decision. This judge can erase her. But, sisters and brothers, where is her fear? She doesn't cower or grovel. She makes the same peaceful request. Render a just decision for me, over and over. She appears fearless and confident. And not just that, Jesus turns the tables. Somehow it's the judge who's full of fear. The judge who doesn't fear God or respect people is afraid of a widow, a persistent, faith-filled widow who will come and strike him. How can this be? Sisters and brothers, I think this is where we find our good news in the gospel today. The widow is not afraid, and the judge is. She shows us that if you have faith, you need not be afraid. Indeed, if you pray to God, as we so beautifully sung, the God who made heaven and earth, why would you be afraid? Why wouldn't you act like the widow? To go back to Father Leo's remarks last week, Lord knows all of us have prayed for things we have not received. We know that disappointment. But perhaps instead, in those moments we've been disappointed, what we've been given might be faith. We might have had our fear taken away. We may have come to peace. The widow, vulnerable and close to God, is confident. And the judge who fears not God now trembles in fear before the widow. So I hope that answers Father Leo's question about the efficacy of prayer from last week. Prayer drives out fear. I hope I passed. You are no unjust teacher. So I'd love to finish the homily there, and some of you might too. But I'm a Jesuit. And because I'm a Jesuit, maybe I'm more like the judge. I'm a little bit troubled by disposition. In training, I'm an educator. And in that role, I suppose many of you have roles like that, overseeing other people. I'm more often in the role of judge than widow. So this gospel forces me, and maybe some of you, to reflect on how we react when we are challenged by those who are vulnerable. Let me tell you the story of Maria, not her real name. She's a sophomore at Cristo Rey de La Salle High School down in the Fruitvale where I work. I was substituting math once, dreaded math, and I think we were graphing parabolas. She asked for help, and I told her to try the problem again, and she rolled her eyes because what do you think she'd been doing? So I walked over and tried to explain whatever the problem was, but she wasn't getting it still. Then the desk mate next to her piped up and in one sentence or two got Maria back on track. Maria finished the problem and then looked up at me. "Mr. Petrich," she said, "you didn't come over to help, and then when you did, what you said didn't make any sense. You should have explained it like my table mate did. That was simple. It wouldn't have taken you that long." There are a lot of ways I could have reacted in that moment. Could have told her off for disrespect. I could have gotten defensive and made some excuse. Or maybe I could have been struck dumb, have nothing to say, in awe at her persistence and fearlessness. Maybe in her confidence, I can just be in awe of God at work within her. I'm not going to tell you which one I picked. What I can tell you is that God picks the third response. God will not be slow to secure the rights of those who call out to him. So we have an invitation here to be like God, to see in those who criticize us, especially those who are vulnerable to us. So this applies to mothers and fathers and older sisters. For us to see in them, those who criticize us, to see faith at work. So that in their confrontation, the younger sibling to the old, siblings over here, in those siblings' fearless pestering, our hearts might be moved. They might become more like God's heart. The faith of those who challenge us might recommit us to caring. Sisters and brothers, like the widow, faith can make us fearless and peaceful in the face of threat or need. And other times, like the judge, the faith of the vulnerable can move our hearts to respond to challenge with listening and love. Okay. Turnabout is fair play, Father Leo. Here is my question for you for next week. Faith in the face of threat is not easy. That peace is hard to come by. And seeing God at work in those who challenge us is also not easy. So what is it? How can we do in the face of that pestering challenge to be moved to love and not to fear? Amen. Amen.